So the other thing that's come out, I guess yesterday into overnight was this motion from OSU / the AG's office to dismiss about a third of the remaining claims regarding the sexual assault allegations against Dr. Richard Strauss from really 1978 to 1998, 77 in total. There are there's 236 of these cases still remaining in the court system, 5 federal active lawsuits, but 236 men are alleging these allegations. So this motion to dismiss was filed by current Attorney General Dave Yost, writing on behalf of the Ohio State University, saying that 43 of these cases, 43 of these 77, should be dismissed in whole because this alleged abuse happened before the date of October 21st, 1986. So this whole motion comes down to a specific date and time. And why October 21st, 1986?
That was my first question.
Well, that was the day that Congress passed a law which allowed states and educational institutions to be sued in federal court for not taking steps to prevent sex abuse against students. So the part of that rule, this motion is that, well, since it happened before Congress said this was a bad thing to do, we can't do anything, is kind of how this reads. The other 34 that are mentioned in AG Yost's motion is they can be dismissed in part, not in whole. So some of it can still stand because, well, this happened spanning that time. Some of it happened before this October 21st date. The other part of it happened after. So any of these things that happened afterward can still stand.
It was very confusing to see this news come down, and especially after having just spoken with the new president at Ohio State, Dr. Ravi Bellamkonda. I spoke with him just last week and asked him about the Strauss investigation because he's the 4th president to be faced with these lawsuits in effect, and the survivors still say, we're not being heard. This compensation is not appropriate. And so it was different than what I'd heard from him, where he says, these are members of our family. That's what he's told me, because I asked him about that in his very first press conference. He says, these are members of our family. I feel for them. We want to do right by them as best we can. And speaking to the settlements that have been put into place so far, and he talked about
this all came out in 2018.
2018. Yeah. $61 million has been used so far. He said 317 settlements, and committed to continuing that dialogue to arrive at a place for the remaining victims. And that's what he told me last week. And so this judgment from Yost, I felt, was a surprise based on that statement.
Right. And I mean, we heard, once this kind of came down, we did reach out to one of the plaintiffs in these lawsuits. This came from Stephen Snyder Hill, and, basically asked, what are your thoughts? And he said, other than fighting the survivors in court for 8 years, they are now trying to throw away 77 people who were sexually abused on, quote, sovereign immunity. And then went on to say, they also filed this as 9,000 students were in the shoe receiving their diplomas. That is who OSU is. So, I mean, it is a scathing statement. And obviously, if as someone who would have gone through this, this would feel very disappointing. If that's probably a light way to put that.
Right.
And this all comes just a week after there was this massive document dump in terms of the Strauss allegations, where we got to see some of the depositions breaking down who knew what. And a lot of these depositions kind of point to that there were a lot of, or several at least, OSU leaders that were aware of at least some of the allegations, but then dismissed it as rumor. Some of the depositions saying, well, that's just what we did in the 1980s and 1990s. We paid no attention to it. And now here we are, he left in 1998, 3 decades later, still going this. Another person that was in there was the former Ohio State medical director, Dr. John Lombardo. He was the one who let Strauss go from his role. And he mentioned in his deposition, it wasn't because of the allegations, it was because of being put on suspension that he couldn't continue to do his job. So, this all kind of is continuing to just bubble up time and time again.
The whole process is just so heartbreaking, and the more we learn, the more heartbreaking it is, because I do think that, especially for Dr. Bellamconda, in the conversations that we've had, his goal is to help these survivors to make them whole as best we can. You can't go back in time, but I'm very curious to see what happens next in this, because it really has become such a difficult process for everybody involved. But the survivors, they really are. They continue. I feel like the anger is growing.
Right. And, Dr. Bellamconda has been with the university now for several years. And at least in, the snippet that I heard, he did seem very sincere about that it's time to make this right and regain what damage has been done to the reputation.
I like that he said these are family members, and because we are talking about an Ohio State family. And I thought that was a powerful statement to make.